Throne and Liberty is a new, free-to-play MMORPG that's available on both PC and consoles, and it just had its big global release today. It is a huge open-world MMO with no classes, but where you pick your own weapons and skills to specialize in. It's a really unique game with quite a lot to offer, but it's sitting at mixed reviews right now on Steam and does seem to have some problems. So today, I want to go over the game right now in 2024 at the start of its global release, the good, the bad, and overall if it's worth playing. So first, let's talk about the new player experience. You start the game in the character creator, and there are no classes and surprisingly no races to choose from, which is weird in a fantasy game with elves, orcs, and monsters to fight, but there is a reason for it, and we'll get to that. The character creator itself is really nice. There's lots to choose from, and the graphics hold up, so the choices you make look really good, and they work into the really good cutscenes later in the game. A really nice perk here is the hair color that you pick for your character is the color of the fur of the wolf or the ground mount when you transform into it, which is a really unique little detail. After making your character, you're thrown into the story, and it's a fairly generic fantasy hero story, search for power to fight evil, that kind of thing. I won't spoil it. And as you play as one of the humans, that's why you're a human, because you're in part of this story, and you journey through this fantasy world, and it's very detailed. I will say the story is surprisingly strong. As soon as a story in an MMO gets a little bit boring, I normally just go into full skip mode and just try and get to endgame as fast as possible. But this one was surprisingly good and held my attention the whole way. It's fully voiced, loads of really good cutscenes, big battles with the villains of the story that you're meeting, and instance content all around it. On top of this, while leveling, there's a good balance of quests, leveling dungeons, big zone events that spawn every few hours that all give you experience on your journey to max level. So yeah, it's a really smooth leveling experience. The journey to 50, the max level, took me around 2 days of playing. Fairly decent amount both of those days. It never felt like a chore. You constantly feel yourself getting stronger, the gear goes up, and the story held out throughout. Good characters, interesting zones, there's choices to make. There's these things where like you find an item and it's a clue and you have to interact with it and solve puzzles. There's just a lot that breaks it up that you're never feeling like you're doing something repetitive. And while leveling, there's no classes. You just kind of equip any two weapons you want, you pick the skills you want to use, and you just get to it. So you can have any two weapons at a time, and you can pick any abilities from your hotbar on those two weapons. So you can run like a bow and a dagger, and then use dagger's poison ability, and then switch to your bow and have poison for your bow. Take a great sword and a wand, and then you've got this big damage weapon, and you can switch and heal with the wand. There's a ton of variety here, and every skill can be leveled, progressed, altered, and it's fantastic. There's so much variety and interesting systems here that it is a really enjoyable leveling experience, and you can keep mixing it up. It does, however, have some major problems, which I want to get into later on. It comes to like the gearing and the builds and stuff, but just for leveling and having fun, there is a lot you can try, there's a lot you can do, and it stays fun the whole time. First, let's talk about the really good stuff though. Let's talk about the positives. Why should you play Throne and Liberty over all the other MMOs out there? What does this do differently? What does it do really well? And why should you go and play this? First up, the travel system. This game has one of the most fluid and smooth travel systems in the MMO genre, and that's not an exaggeration. Firstly, you have the morphs. You press the morph button and you turn into an animal based on where you are. If you're just running around on the ground, you'll turn into like a cat or a wolf or whatever you've picked as your ground mount, your ground morph. But press this button while you're jumping from a high place and you'll turn into a bird or whatever you've picked as your flying morph, and you'll glide across the map. Press it in water and you turn into an otter or a turtle, and everything is fast, everything is smooth, and everything is instant. It's just so good, and you can see it all here. On top of this, not just the traveling around with the morphs, just traveling in general, you click teleport anywhere on the map and it is instant. There's like a zoning thing where you like fly up and then you just appear. There's no loading screen, there's no big delay, at least on PC. This is all instant travel, and it just makes you feel so immersed. The next big thing is the open world events. Every hour there are events that take place over certain parts of the map. If you've played Lost Ark, you'll be prepared for this. Like the island system, where each hour there's a different island that has a cool thing on it. Very, very similar, but on a much smaller scale. And they're fun. They're really, really fun. One of the best ones is this creature, and it's called the Gigantine, and it's this giant floating whale, and it just floats around the map. Every couple of hours it will appear, and if you can find a high spot, you can just fly onto its back and ride it around the map. You can also mine rare resources off of the clusters that appear on its back, and this is just one event, and it's a really unique one. Then you also have events where you have to like collect a certain amount of items or gather things, and the person who collects the most, like wolf pelts or dust or whatever it is the event is, you get a big reward. And it's just really cool seeing everyone just roaming around and doing these events. It makes the game feel much more alive compared to modern games that are more instance focused or they have a lot of phasing. This feels like there are hundreds of people around you pretty much all the time. And then there's the big PvP events, zone event quests, conquest things. There's so much things to do while leveling and also a big part of endgame. And you can do most of this while leveling completely solo and still get pretty good rewards. Then we have the combat itself. I never thought I would be praising the combat in Throne and Liberty. I played during the beta and the combat was terrible. I was even tempted to even give this a try on release, but they have revamped it and they have saved it and made it so good. It's really clean, it's really polished, and it's just good action combat, which you don't get very often in MMOs. It doesn't feel quite as fluid as, say, BDO, but it's close. You've got charge attacks, stuns, directionals, positionals, dashes, dodges, defenses. You can take buffs to arrows that mean they do more damage if you're on high ground, or they do more damage in the direction of the wind. Magic takes into account the weather to give you buffs on things like if targets are wet. Overall, it's just really, really good. It's well thought out. There's a lot of complexity to it, and it's one of the best parts of the game, in my opinion. You really do feel like you're fighting. You feel like you're just dodging in real time, doing things. It's not just tab target, press your rotation. And the final really good thing about the game that I want to talk about is character progression. There are so many systems, more than I was expecting, that can advance your progression of your character, that it makes you feel motivated to play. New weapons, common, green, blue, purple. On top of that, you can level them 1, 2, 3, +4, +5. And you need resources, and you can farm those resources to do that. On top of that, all your skills can be leveled up the same way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Level them up, and they do more. Every skill also has a mini skill tree. I mostly played like staff and bow, and there are abilities that let you hold a charge for longer to deal more damage, or charge that ability while moving for more mobility. You could have an arrow shot that also lets you dodge back once you get that part of the tree. Add extra fireballs, or add burn into your fire spell, or even turn a fire spell into a lightning spell. There is a lot here. I've literally just been playing one build for the most of my time, and I'm still learning new things. I'm still finding new things to put in. I'm still working out how to do different things and unlocking new parts of these skills. And it feels really fun that I can't wait to try and do it with swords or daggers or different weapons. And then each of these weapons on top of this have a mastery system where you can unlock points and push through another type of skill tree to unlock more passive abilities. So yeah, overall, you can spend a lot of your time in Throne of Liberty progressing your character, your item level, your skills, your abilities. And if you're into that, it's going to be rewarding for you. It's going to feel very satisfying and it's very fun. However, I will say, this brings me on to some of the game's major problems. Although the progression is fantastic, the builds and classes themselves have some issues. Firstly, the game says you can play any weapon you want and any way you want. But then, say you do that, and you get to level 20 and you queue for a dungeon, you're told to queue as a tank, a healer, or a DPS. But this is a classless game. What? And there's no guidance on how to build out one of these classes. And say you're playing with a sword and shield, or you're playing with a wand. Maybe you don't even know that you're playing with a healer weapon. I went with the bow and the staff to be a range damage dealer, and I felt clueless at almost every decision. Do I take gear with crit, hit rate, evasion, melee defense? Where do I put my stat points? Can I just wing it? I tried. But you feel almost forced to follow a detailed build guide from the start to have any idea where your character should be going. You can just do your own thing, but as soon as you hit endgame, people will quickly start demanding meta builds and meta things, looking for dagger bow, healer 2000 gear score, looking for group, and it gets very competitive very fast. So yeah, this is a classless system, but that almost feels mute when you have to funnel into, these meta builds or meta roles to get into dungeons and get into content. I'd rather just have the option at the start of picking a mage or a rogue and then having the customization within that. I've played a ton of sandbox games with classless systems, Albion, Mortal Online, Fraction Online, things like that, and I think everything I've played handles it better than this. Another small issue comes again at the end game, and it won't be an issue for everybody, but the end game feels, I don't know, I've tried to word this and I don't know what to say other than it feels a little bit shallow. There's a handful of endgame dungeons. There's big Zerg PvP, big massive group PvP. There's zone bosses in PvP zones as well. And then there's daily contracts, but there's arenas as well. But that's kind of it. If you don't enjoy big group guild content like territory control, big open world PvP, there isn't that much to get your teeth into each day. The daily contracts are time-gated daily, and the amount you can do in dungeons is time-gated as well. Every dungeon, you need a certain currency to open the chests at the end of the dungeons, so you're going to hit 50 fairly fast, and if you're playing solo, you're going to do your contracts, do a few dungeons, and you're going to hit the point of, what do I do next, quite fast. On top of this, professions and crafting doesn't really feel finished. Maybe that's just me. You've got cooking and fishing right now, and you can craft gear by collecting certain blueprints and items, but it all just feels very shallow. I don't want to say the end game is bad, but unless you're excited for big guild Zerg v Zerg content, there's definitely better MMOs out there with more complex and in-depth end games. Your main tasks will be grinding out your epic gear and then going for epic gear with better traits on it and improving that with the epic upgrade materials and leveling your skills and abilities. But you're going to be doing the same things over and over again, and you're going to get time gated. The last thing I want to talk about, it gets thrown about a lot, and it's Throne Unlimited is pay to win. Is it? Yeah, it is. It is. There's a cash shop and there's a battle pass, and there are two currencies: ornate coins, which you can earn in game. I've got quite a few of those, and then lucent, which is the swiping currency. And on the store itself, you can buy morph skins, titles, cosmetics, the battle pass, all that stuff. And then you can buy crafting materials. And that doesn't seem so bad on the surface. However, come out of the cash shop and there's another thing called the auction house. And this auction house is completely about lucent. You don't buy and sell for gold, you buy and sell with lucent, the money that you can pay to transfer into. It's about 15 British pounds for about, or like $20 for 1,000 lucent. And there are weapons and armor right now on release selling on the auction house for 5,000 and 10,000 lucent. So over 100 pounds, I believe. On the positive side, if you do find a really rare item, you can sell it for lucent and then have this premium currency to buy cosmetics or the battle pass and things like that, which I think is good. And if this was a mostly PvE game like Diablo or something, I would say that's fine. You know, it's cool that you can find a cool drop in the game and then get some premium currency. That's cool. However, this game is very heavily at endgame about guild v guild and PvP. And if you just hit max level and buy a ton of lucent, you can get much better endgame gear faster than everybody else. And if you're paying to get ahead of everyone, then you are winning. You know, you're not going above that. You can fully play this game free to play, and if you don't mind the time gating of certain things, you can get fully bis endgame gear, but you can also pay to get there much faster. Okay, so overall, should you play Throne and Liberty? Yes. 1,000 times yes. The game isn't perfect, but there are hundreds of hours of fun here. There's a beautiful, stunning world with really good action combat, loads of character progression, dungeons, events, PvP. This is a fantastic game. I will say that, and I don't want that to be mistaken. This is a fantastic game that is completely free. It has its issues, but for a totally free-to-play MMORPG, I would recommend everyone gives this a try. Some people are gonna try this, they're gonna love this, they're gonna join a guild, they're gonna get into the big endgame PvP and progression, and they're gonna get hooked on the gear grind and getting ahead of others and beating other people. Others are gonna play through the story, hit 50, and move on. And either way, that's fine because it's a free game. So I definitely recommend trying it if you like the sound of it, you like the look of it, or you just enjoy MMOs. I'm also going to say this is a new MMO, and generally a new MMO release is pretty fun, so it's worth a try. I'm really enjoying it so far. The end game hasn't quite hooked me yet, but I'm enjoying what I've been doing so far, working through the max level dungeons, the events. They've been pretty good, but I'd love to hear what you think of the game if you've tried it or if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer anything down below. But that's it from me. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.